Western Imperialism, as told by Noah Gandotra.
And Caitlin Cook.
First off, what is imperialism? Well, imperialism is the policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. This policy was adopted by Western European countries in the 1800s, or also known as the 19th century. Causes of imperialism can be referred to as near nationalism, economy, enlightenment, resources, and racism. You can remember this by thinking that everyone during this time wanted everything to be near. Nationalism. Each European country believed that it was the best. In order to prove this, they saw domination of other countries, cultures, and people. Economy. Markets in Europe were very competitive due to high tariffs. Hence, Europe needed external colonies to support their own markets at home. Enlightenment. Exploration was a fundamental idea of the Enlightenment. It was considered noble to pursue new frontiers. Resources. Rubber, coconut oil, and other important goods only came from colonies such as Africa and the Philippines. By colonizing such places, a country could get a hold on such trade and valued resources. Racism. During this time, the idea of white man's burden was put forth by the English poet Rudyard Kipling. It kind of exemplified social Darwinism, because it exemplified racial superiority over other non-Europeans. What it basically said was that it was white people's duty to civilize non-Europeans in education, government, and religion.
European technological advances. Guns were so important during this time, such as for killing people and stuff. Quinine was also used for where the white males could survive malaria in Africa. Communication and transportation were also improved, and the telegraph was made, and railroads and steamboats also helped this. These technological advances allowed warfare around the world to rapidly increase. Here's a battle to know, the Battle of Omdurman, where small British force came up the Nile River on their steamboats. The British were able to beat the Muslims at Sudan's capital. The British used machine guns, to massacre 11,000 Mahdi people, whereas only 28 of the British were killed. The scramble for Africa. In southern Africa, the 1600s, the Dutch were fleeing religious persecution and colonized South Africa. They were nicknamed the Boers. They were farmers. They fought off the natives and began to take slaves in southern Africa. South Africa under British rule. During the Napoleonic Wars, the British take South Africa. The Boers, also known as the Afrikaners, flee the British occupation.
The Boers go on and create the Transvaal and Orange Free State in order to create peace with the British-owned Cape Colony. However, this peace is short-lived because gold and diamonds are soon found in these Dutch states, which leads to the Boers, or also known as the South African War, from 1898 to 1902. The Boers' guerrilla warfare withstood an attack of over 500,000 British soldiers, with only 30,000 troops on the Boer side. However, over the course of 4 years, the Boers lose and become absorbed into the Union of South Africa. Under the Union of South Africa, the White Parliament established the idea of apartheid, which means separation. Racists separated black South Africans into reservations with rigid control. The whites remained in power with apartheid in place until the 1980s with the rise of the African National Congress and Nelson Mandela.
The Congo! A murder mystery? Missionary Livingston disappears into the Congo, where U.S. journalist Henry Stanley sets out to find him. Henry Stanley discovers that Livingston was just chilling down in the Congo. Fame and fortune. Henry Stanley makes hella bank, as Noah likes to say, and King Leopold II of Belgium hires him. In Belgium, Stanley finds rubber down in the Congo. He thus claims the Congo as private property of his king, Leopold II. The companies then begin to enslave the population down in the Congo in order to collect more rubber. The slavery is done by force publique, or the company enforcer. The press cover it extremely negatively, and thus Leopold II sells the Congo to the Belgian government.
Cecil Rhodes and FRQ fluff. This is very important stuff you should know for your FRQs. Cecil Rhodes was a British nationalist who embodied imperialism with his idea to connect British territories from the southern tip of Africa to the northern tip. He stated this by saying he wanted to connect all of British land with railroad tracks from Cairo to Cape Town. By the way, Cairo is actually the north part. However, he ultimately failed. The Berlin Conference. That was my terrible German accent. Also known as the Congress of Berlin, from 1894 to 1895, Germany and France tried to check British expansion by creating the idea of effective occupation, which basically said colonies had to be occupied by their colonial motherlands. This checked the expansion of British imperialism and made it impossible for one country to have a monopoly on Africa. India, my homeland! The British East India Company was a trading company that owned about a half of India and hired sepoy Indian soldiers to be used. However, religious conflicts were common, which led to the Sepoy Rebellion in 1857 to 1858, where Hindus and Muslims were offended by the fat the Boers were shipped in, which led to revolts all over India. The British government steps in to save the British East India Company. India, which is already separated by religious conflicts, is quickly taken over, and by 1858, India is ruled by a vice-king under the British Parliament. India gets an upgrade. The Indian Civil Service is an infrastructure put in place by the British Parliament to help educate India on self-government, create infrastructure such as railroads, and put in public health measures such as sewage and sewage treatment facilities. This unifies laws and government under British rule. However, due to the British liberal education, India becomes nationalistic, eventually leading to the formation of the Indian National Congress Party in 1885. The Sino-Japanese War lasted from 1894 to 1895 during this time. What happened was, in this very quick summary, the Chinese lost and Japanese take Manchuria, which is a part of China. This leads to the open door and sphere of influence policies. The open door policy basically means any country who wishes to trade with other countries can. And the sphere of influence policy basically means there are parts of the ocean that can be occupied by certain countries' navies.
The Chinese freak out, aka the Chinese Revolution. The Boxers were Chinese nationalists, and they hated outsiders, also known as xenophobia. They practiced certain martial arts and believed that they could stop bullets from hitting them. They wanted to kill all Christian Chinese and foreigners. Encircled foreign section of Beijing. Other foreign armies step in order to save the citizens, and the Chinese army say that they are unable to help. The Chinese secretly wish that the Boxers had won. The most foreigners are Japanese, German, and British. It turns out that their martial arts were unable to stop bullets. Sun Yat-sen, he was an American-educated man and in 1911 overthrew the Qing dynasty. He established the Chinese Republic, which ultimately fails.
Japanese imperialism. Turns out Japanese were extremely good planners. In 1866, they conquered Korea. In 1894 to 1895, they took parts of China, including Manchuria. In 1896, they took Taiwan, and in 1904 to 1905, they proved their imperialistic strength with the defeat of Russia in the Russo-Japanese War.
The critics of imperialism. Most people really liked imperialism because they thought it boosted the national economy. So, the critics instead targeted the morality of imperialism. There was a strong criticism of social Darwinism. There was a quote saying, "Blessed are the strong, for they prey on the weak." Joseph Conrad. He wrote a book called The Heart of Darkness, which was about the Belgian Congo and about the terrifying nature of that whole situation down there. In his book, the main character put severed heads on picket fences. This book illustrates the problem with colonial imperialism.
Thank you guys for watching. We hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to stop our presentation at any moment to review.